Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Artist Talk series with the Southside Community Arts Center and the Daryl Chappelle Foundation. My name is Zakia, and I am the manager of public engagement here at the Southside Community Arts Center. And before we begin, I'm just going to share some technical information with you all. If you could please choose your language before we begin, that would be really great, and I'm sure helpful to those who need it. I'm also going to let you all know that this session and this talk is being recorded. So anything that's said, shared, or commented will definitely be recorded. So with the logistics and everything out of the way, please allow me to introduce Daryl Chappelle, who is the founder and CEO of the Daryl Chappelle Foundation. Daryl?
Thank you so much, Zakia. I really appreciate the introduction. So welcome, everyone. Welcome. My name is Daryl Chappelle. I'm the founder and CEO of the Daryl Chappelle Foundation, which is headquartered in Washington, D.C. We are so pleased to welcome you here to our Artist Talk series number 4, where we're featuring a cinema photographer and a photographer. We're very, very excited to have you today. A little bit about what we're planning to cover. There's the agenda on the screen. We're going to actually go through some very exciting conversations with the actual established artists. And then we'll have a great chance to have questions and answers, give you a chance to really raise the questions that you may have. The Daryl Chappelle Foundation is a private foundation, 501c3. We focus in on, our mission is to enable emerging artists globally to achieve their highest potential. We have a global focus and we look to make a local impact. We actually work with artists through our partner organizations. Our main focus areas with these artists are artists in residence. We have one in Puerto Rico with the Museo de Arte de Puerto Rico. We are starting a photographer in residence, which will be announced in the spring. We also have provided emergency support grants given the pandemic and the resulting financial crisis. We provide $1,000 to artists. We partnered with the Bronx Documentary Center and also the Museum of Contemporary African Diaspora Art, MOCADA, in Brooklyn to send out those particular grants last year. And we also sponsor these particular events, which are the Artist Talks, a great opportunity for both emerging artists and also established artists to share their experiences, their challenges, and their actual work. So today's session, you'll have a great opportunity to see established artists, a cinema photographer, a photographer sharing their actual work, their life experiences, and also some words of wisdom that I think we all will appreciate. We're very pleased today to co-sponsor this event and partner with the Chicago organization called the Southside Community Arts Center. So I'm very pleased to hand it over now to our partner organization, Monique. Monique?
Thank you, Daryl. It's been our pleasure working with you and wanted to say greetings from the Southside Community Arts Center. It's my distinct pleasure to speak with all of you today. My name is Monique Brinkman-Hill, and I'm the Executive Director of the Southside Community Arts Center. We're thrilled to partner with the Chappelle Foundation and be a part of this virtual Artist Talk and learn more about these incredibly talented artists. The Southside Community Arts Center was founded in 1940 and is the oldest African-American art center in the United States, still in its original location. The center was designated a Chicago Historic Landmark and a National Treasure. We've been a home to artists such as one of our founders, Dr. Margaret Burroughs, Charles White, Gordon Parks, Kerry James Marshall, Gwendolyn Brooks, Fahim Majid, Jonathan Romaine, to mention just a few of the artists who've been a part of our collective history. Our mission is to conserve, preserve, and promote the legacy and future of African-American art and artists, while educating the community on the value of art and culture. We proudly showcase established artists and help to nurture emerging creators. Through educational and artistic programs, exhibitions, talks, tours, we strive to connect community members to African-American art and artists. Please check us out and follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So please feel free to follow us and keep up with what's going on. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's program, April M. Frazier. She is a documentary and lifestyle photographer from Houston, Texas. She is a graduate of Prairie View A&M University and Rice University. She received her MBA. April worked in oil and gas for 15 years in various IT roles, including an expat role in Hamburg, Germany. In 2001, April launched a photography business specializing in collaboration with minority and women-owned businesses in Houston, using imagery and consulting insight to further their business goals. April is currently the advancement director for PhotoFest Literary through Photography Education Program in Houston. April's personal photographic work involves creating architectural and landscape images while traveling across Europe and the Caribbean, most extensively through Jamaica. Her most prized and ongoing project is documentation of her ancestral Texas roots by creating visuals on lands with the familial connection from enslavement to present day. Her photographs have been exhibited in galleries in New York, Oregon, and Texas, and in a group exhibition in London. April and her husband, Chadwick, live in Richmond, Texas, and enjoy the honor of raising their 4-year-old daughter, Lily. Please help me welcome April M. Frazier.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you for that awesome introduction, and thanks to the Southside Community Arts Center and the Daryl Chappelle Foundation for this opportunity to moderate this conversation today. We have two awesome photographers that I'll be introducing to you today, John Simmons and Early Hutnall Jr. My personal interest in photography, I believe it is a tool that you can use to communicate, tell stories, and remember our past. Photography is important because it can be used to inspire and influence and display diverse perspectives. Programs like this from the Daryl Chappelle Foundation bring light to artistic talent and help share it with the world. So we'll start today with John Simmons. And I'll go through his bio, and after he will share some of his photographs with us. John Simmons is a photographer and Emmy Award-winning cinematographer born in 1950, Chicago, Illinois. He was exposed to the art of photography at a young age when a photographer came to his family home to make portraits. As a teenager, he met Bobby Singstack of the Chicago Defender, a Black newspaper established in 1906. He was inspired by Bobby's style and approach to photography. John studied art at Fisk University and cinematography at the University of Southern California. His work at the Chicago Defender and Muhammad Speaks newspapers spurred his interest in street and documentary photography. John prefers to photograph in black and white as he believes it's a powerful tool to help tell a story, infused with his own lived experience. John is involved and leads several organizations, including the Center for Creative Photography, the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Photography, and the American Society of Cinema Photographers. John also was a professor at UCLA for 20 years. His photographs live in permanent collections at several institutions and galleries, including the Harvard Art Museum, the Houston Museum of Fine Art, and the University of Maryland. John is a working cinematographer here in Los Angeles, and his most recent project is called Family Reunion and is on Netflix. So welcome, John. You're still muted, I believe.
Hey, everybody, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm pretty excited, and I want to tell Daryl and his organization, thank you very much for having me here, and let's get started. So I started taking pictures when I was 15 years old. I went to a convention with Bobby Singstack's family, the National Negroes Publishers Convention in New York City. And I had been fascinated by Bobby as a teenager. His brother and I both used to look up to him. You know, he played jazz. He had a dark room. you know, he had a lot of hip friends, and it was like, you know, that time of the season. It was 1965. Chicago was a very hip place to be. So Bobby loaned me a camera at that event, and when we developed the film, he said, "Hey man, you really have an eye." And I began to study under him. He handed me the Sweet Fly Paper of Life by Langston Hughes and with photographs by Roy DeCarava. And that book not only has inspired me, but has inspired a number of young photographers on their way up. We like to call it the Bible, you know, because Roy definitely navigated many careers in that direction. And after that, Bobby began to turn me on to other photographers, other street photographers, Ernest Cole, Gordon Parks, a couple of guys, Roy Lewis in Washington, D.C., so many wonderful photographers that have inspired so many of us, laid the groundwork for everything I want to do. And I have to say, I stand on their shoulders. The photograph that you're looking at right now was taken in 1969 in Macomb, Georgia. And Bobby and I went down there to cover the story of a civil rights demonstration where a young girl had gone into a store, and the owner of the store asked her to hurry up, and she told him to wait a minute as she was looking at the candy, and he pushed her out the store. So her mother came in there to see what was going on, and he pushed her out the store. So the Black community decided to boycott the business district. And Bobby and I were asked to go down there and photograph. I was a student at Fisk University at the time. Bobby was an artist in residence, artist in resident at the university. So we go down there to shoot this thing. And if you look at the photograph on the right, you see a policeman with a helmet on. And on the left, you see a policeman with SU. I don't know what that stands for. And behind him, you see a man with a baseball helmet on. Well, what they did was they deputized the truck drivers and had them come and help control the crowd. And that day, as I was taking photographs, one of those people, I don't know exactly which one it was, hit me across my back with a baton. I fell to the ground and saw stars. And when I woke up, he was leaning over me, telling me, if I were you, I'd be out of this place before the sun set. So that's the story behind this photograph. It's, it's a real memory to me, and I'm glad to be able to share it. Want to go on to the next image? Oh, this is a picture I took in just right outside of Oaxaca, Mexico. And one of my students, her name was Yolanda Cruz, had made a film on migrants, and she won a fellowship. And the artist Alejandro Santiago was granted a fellowship to make these statues representing all the people who had crossed the border coming into the United States. It was 2005 statues that he made. And this photograph, I went down there to help her shoot the documentary after she graduated. And this photograph, a man is carrying a statue to lay on the ground to catalog it as they sent it out, before they sent it out to be in an exhibit. If you look on the left at the bottom, you'll see a white tag that's hanging from the foot of one of the statues. And these statues were children, they were adults, they were broken, some of them were dead, to tell the story of these people that had crossed into the United States. And Alejandro and I became pretty close. He died 2 years ago, but he crawled across the desert and came into the United States before he made these statues, so he could have an accurate interpretation of what the experience was like. This exhibit first opened in Monterrey, Mexico. And then the second place was actually Portugal, where I met Daryl. So yeah, that's Alejandro's work. This is at the Bud Billiken Parade in Chicago, 1968. And that's a Chicago policeman escorting this young man someplace, as policemen do in Chicago and all over the country. And we can move on. This picture is called The Fan. And I was at this religious event. It was an African religion, Ifa. And I turn around and the sun was in everyone's faces. I turn around, this young woman has this fan in her face. And I just love how she has her hand extended for an offering. And in the picture, you see the fist on the right, on the left, and the image of the flag around her neck. I just think it's a powerful picture. Not long ago, I printed it pretty big, like about 4 feet by something. It's a powerful image for me. I like it. This picture is called The Dance. It was taken in the early 60s in Chicago. It's in a jazz club. And during that time, you didn't see many interracial couples in public. I mean, Chicago during the 60s was, a very segregated city, extremely segregated. And you see the woman comfortably embracing the man during the dance, and you see the man with his eyes scanning the room, because you could never tell where some opposition is going to come from. And yeah, that's that one. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee when I was a student in Nashville, and I had a little apartment in the community. And in this photograph, you can see my Volkswagen outside the window. And this photograph is a picture of my neighbors having dinner, who works for me. This is a funny picture. I love this picture. I love it for a number of reasons. I was with a friend of mine at an exhibit I was having, and he said, "Johnny, did you ever do the math on this picture?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "That little girl is about 60 years old now." I was like, oh my God. But I was in an ice cream parlor, and there was some folding chairs along the wall. Picture was taken in 1967. There were some folding chairs along the wall, and I went to sit down, and I missed the chair and fell between two chairs. And when I looked up, this is who was looking at me, and that's how I took this picture. It's one of my favorites. Everybody likes this picture. How could you not? Forever, she'll be what, 4 years old, 3 years old? It's the magic of a picture. This is called Love on the Bus. It was taken in 1967, I think 67. I was 16 years old. And these people were on the back of the bus. And I love this picture because, I feel like it pays homage to Roy DeCarava and Langston Hughes. The other thing about this picture is it says everything about the moment, because there's 3 exposures that I took when I took this picture. The first one, both people are looking out the window. The second one is this one. And the third one, they're looking at each other talking. So it's just this little brief moment that they share this little romantic image, and it's called Love on the Bus. This picture, 2 shoes. I don't remember what year this was taken in, but I had to be careful with this picture because it's cropped. It's really cropped a lot. And I did it because the 2 shoes themselves say everything about what the little girl is about. But the entire picture of the little girl, she's very unkept. She's eating some watermelon. It's just not it's not an image that you could share with the world, because, so many people at that time would take advantage of anything derogatory that someone could actually speak of in terms of our people. So I was in a gallery one day where my work was, and this woman is looking at the photographs, and there's no one else in the gallery except the 2 of us and the guy that runs the gallery. And she walks over to me and she says, I just want to tell you that I purchased this photograph of yours. I said, whoa, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then she says, she was a business lady. It was in the middle of the afternoon in a business district in Los Angeles. And she says, you know, I've always had everything I wanted. And I saw that photograph and it just made me realize that I had to be grateful, and being grateful was important. She said, and her eyes are getting a little watery. She has, you know, I'm really wondering what she's about to say. And she says, I'm going to put this picture by my front door. So when I walk out my front door, I'll be grateful for everything that happens to me. And I'm going to share it with people. And that said a lot to me because it talked about the power of the image. Not only that, but how an image itself affects people. And it has a life long beyond the moment that we take the picture. And it affects people, you know, long beyond the moment that we've printed it. Yeah. I call this picture window writing. And I took it in Chicago in the 60s. It's, you know, it says everything about a certain kind of creative freedom. And I love how this young woman is expressing herself and the frost on the window and the man that's sitting across from her. I don't know who it is. Maybe it's her father or friend, but it resonates to a lot of people. And it's, you know, it's a popular image. This image is called Will on the bus. Will on Chevy. And he lived next door to me. And his family, you know, they were pretty close to me. You know, I lived in Nashville for 5 years. And I took this photograph when he first got his car. And I tell you, that was a moment where my man was so in love with that so in love with that car. It's a nice image, you know. Early Hudnall, my God, his work is amazing. The first time I saw his pictures when Daryl connected us, I was like, oh my God, I felt like throwing my camera away. I felt like there was no reason in the world to take another picture because Early had covered everything.
And he told you to keep it. He told you to keep it. That's your signature.
He told me to keep my camera yesterday.
Yes.
But his work is so amazing. We're cut from the same cloth, and his work is just incredible. Was he able to get on with us, or is he dealing with the weather situation?
No, I don't see him on yet, so we'll have to improvise in his absence. So
Well,
thank you for sharing some of your images with us. Personally, I do love the one of the young lady with the ice cream. Her eyes are so deep and rich, and she's really looking through you while she enjoys her ice cream.
yeah,
So,
she is. You know, I mean, it's a shame that Early's not going to be here with us, or maybe he'll be here later.
mhm.
But the thing about a picture, I always say, you have to imagine a photograph hanging in a room 100 years from now when the photographer's not there to speak on it. And you're there just to experience that image. And I like to say that it's like music to look at a picture. Because when you look at a picture, you look at a photograph and you get what that photograph has to offer. Like you look at a painting. When you listen to some John Coltrane's, Miles Davis, or Bach or Beethoven, you don't sit there and analyze that experience. You just sit there and enjoy it. And it touches all parts of your being, and you get ideas and you get feelings, and you begin to think about what was happening at that time. I was listening to public radio and they had some classical music on, and the radio announcer said this was composed in 1735. And I was like, oh my God, 1735, you know? And then I was at the art museum. I used to take my class there, and I'm looking at a 17th century painting. And you think that there's no art supply stores, there's nowhere to buy a brush, there's nowhere to buy paint. You got to make everything. So by the time you finally put a brush to canvas, that brush has, that canvas has a plot, that image has a plot, a subplot. It's like, it has a life that lives beyond the frame. That's exactly what these photographs do. These photographs do the exact same thing. You know, we get something from them. We wonder who Early is. And the one thing that we do know is that when any piece of art is created, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's taking a photograph or whatever, at that moment that it's being created, where that artist is giving you the total experience of his entire life in that image. Every time we create something, it's almost like a cash register that tallies up. I press the shutter, I'm framing something from the reference of all my experiences. And that's why even if Early isn't here, his images speak so powerfully about
Correct.
who he is, you know?
Correct.
Sorry to run on so much.
No, no worries. That perfectly leads into, I'm still going to share his bio and some of his images. So Early Hutnall was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi in 1946, and he began his connection with photography while serving in Vietnam in the early 1960s. He was a U.S. Marine. In 1968, he relocated to Houston to attend Texas Southern University, and he received a BA in fine art education. With inspiration and encouragement from mentors Dr. Thomas Freeman and John Biggers, who was a artist there, Hutnall worked as a university photographer for over 40 years at the school. Early's sense of community derives from his strong family upbringing and what is naturally on display in the African-American culture. This tenet helps shape his interest in photography and influences his work as an artist. His documentation of African-American people and life in Houston's 3rd and 4th and 5th wards communities serve as a vast body of work rich in historical context. Early's photographs have been influential in the portrayal of African Americans and culture, most recently in 2017 by inspiring the cinematographer James Laxton in the Academy Award-winning movie for Best Picture, Moonlight. Laxton mentioned Hutnall as a visual inspiration for how African Americans should be depicted on film, aesthetically and symbolically. Early's photographs are displayed in many public and private collections across America, including the Smithsonian, Art Institute of Chicago, and the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. So many may not be aware, but Houston and Texas overall is experiencing an extreme winter storm. Hopefully that's ended by this morning, but people were impacted in many ways. I lost power, we lost water. Some people's homes were flooded by the impact of water returning in bursting pipes due to the freezing temperatures. We don't experience many snow storms or conditions in Houston or further south, so this took everyone by surprise, and we're managing through as much as we can. So my assumption is Early may have some issues that he has to handle. So we're sorry that we miss him, but we will carry on and bring highlight to his work. So I'll bring you through some of his images. This one is, of course, of Muhammad Ali. He visited one of the centers in Houston where boxing was taught to youth in the Third Ward community. So you see a lot of the youngsters around him pumping their fists. Looks like he was leading one of his chants. You know, Muhammad Ali was quick with the verse and rhyme. So it looks like he was leading the young people in a chant. Hold on 1 second. Early is calling me, so I'll see if he can join us. 1 second, please. Daryl, if you could take over for 1 second.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, John. Remarkable work. And I just can't thank you enough for walking us through it. It's powerful images. And I know we will have questions and answers for those who are out there in the global public. So please get your questions ready. You'll be able to speak, send your questions to the Q&A, and actually we'll get those addressed. during the actual question and answer segment. Also, as a reminder for our Spanish-speaking folks who are watching, there is the button on the screen to choose your interpretation en español. Para la gente que habla español, hay un botón en el botón tras en la pantalla que dice interpretation. Hay que seleccionarlo y seleccionar español. I know there were some questions coming through about that. So hopefully everybody's in good shape. Okay, April, back to you.
Yes, he just said he'll be joining in 2 seconds.
Oh,
So,
great. That's wonderful.
Glad
Man,
he'll be on.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. So I can still paraphrase his images, but we'll give him a chance to cover anything I may have missed in describing these images.
Meanwhile, was there a question that came through on the Q&A for John? Did I hear a
Yes.
question? Could we address that question?
Sure. For John,
you.
there was one asking, what was it like to photograph subjects in the southern states when sundown towns were in effect? And that's from Michael Williams.
You know, I was young then, I was, in my teens, and like all teenagers, I was bulletproof, and my enthusiasm was greater than my fear. And there were times that things would come up that would make me feel like I was doing the wrong thing. I can remember going down to some city in the South to hear Jimi Hendrix play. And I got there really early in my Volkswagen, and I'm sitting on the hood, and there's, it's down south. I think we're in Alabama someplace. And Jimi Hendrix was coming in on a helicopter, which I should have taken instead of driven, right? And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I got my camera, and here comes a sheriff, and he shines his light on my face way down the way. And all of a sudden it turns into a spotlight right in the face of me and my friends. And we realized that we really couldn't stay there for Jimmy's concert. So it was a little difficult at times, but most of the time I didn't even think about it. I just took pictures.
And there's one more question. What was the motivator for you to raise the camera and take a picture? What was the story you saw through that lens? What's the emotion that you felt in that moment?
I kind of feel like, first of all, there's an affinity that you have for humanity to take the kind of pictures that we take. And we all know that we're a part of the fabric of life. We know that we're inseparable from the people that we see, the lives that we live. You cannot take the kind of pictures we take and not realize that your life affects everyone else's and their life affects yours. So the motivation for taking the pictures was basically an affinity for the subjects, an affinity and my connection to them. And the fact that taking a picture is just important, it's just an expression like any other art form. And the motivation was the fact that I love to take pictures, our paths crossed, and everything happened at a precise moment to make that picture valuable and to make that moment valuable. And it never goes away. And I mean, that's how I still feel when I take a picture.
Awesome. So welcome Early. Early
Hello,
Hutnall has
hello.
joined us. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're right on time. We're just about to go through your images. So this is the first one with Muhammad Ali. So
But let me
I've
say
already
hi
shared your bio. So
Let
we
me
have a
say-
little bit of information about who you are.
Just before he starts, Early, I'm so glad you're here, man.
But man, I'm here. I'm here. I was out doing some plumbing earlier this morning, and I was under the impression, I don't know why or how I got 2 o'clock. So
Oh.
I was going to be on time, but I'm here.
Good to see you, man.
one
Good
thing.
to see you. Oh,
Okay.
man.
All
You're
right.
so lucky.
All right.
You-
So sting like a butterfly, float like a butterfly, and sting like a bee. His name is Muhammad Ali. He was in Houston, and he was on a street corner with some kids. Mohammed always loved to go into the community and see the people, and the kids and stuff would just maul him. They would just come around. And so the chant of Muhammad Ali and the fist raised, the greatest and all of that. And so the kids and the small boys felt that way about themselves, that they one day could be Muhammad Ali. And this picture was made in, I think it was 1972. Mm-hmm. Lady, first Sunday morning, 3rd Ward. This lady, her husband was working in the yard, making miniature churches. And she stepped out to go to church and dressed in white and standing there, framed by the door. And if you notice, there's 2 little pieces of metal, which behind that is actually a bird that went on the screen doors in most homes in the South and so forth. So to me, it looked almost like 2 wings, but she stood there, and I turned and I made this picture of her, and I called it First Sunday Morning, 3rd Ward. 2 boys, 2 dogs. It's typical things you see with kids in the neighborhood. A lot of them have pets, dogs, and so forth. And it was just amazing that I was able to catch a larger boy and a large dog, and a small boy and a small dog. And the name of it is 2 boys, 2 dogs. This is during the summertime of the year. Probably school is out and they are having a good time, during the summer, playing and so forth and on. And what I do, I normally walk, and I really take advantage of things that I actually see within the community. The next photograph I called The Trumpeter. I was in Paris, standing in front of the Notre Dame Cathedral, and this guy was acting like a mannequin. And he would make a turn and he would hold the pose for a few minutes, and he would raise one leg and he would stand on it, wouldn't shake, and people would really throw coins into his basket. Sometimes he would blow his horn, but he would stand there with his trumpet like he was about to, as you would say, Gabriel, blow your horn. So this is the image that I named the Trumpeter. And this is typical of the kinds of things you see, the multiplicity of people that you find throughout Europe. And to me, it was fascinating to have the opportunity to interact with other cultures. Girl with Flag was shot after the Desert Storm Parade. People, they had passed out flags to people along the parade route. The troops marched down Main Street here in Houston. And after the parade was over, these 2 little girls were sitting on the curb. You can't see the other one to the left. And I was standing above her as she looked away, and I was able to make this particular photograph. The photographer has to be on the site. He has to be, if he's not there, he cannot make the image. And so this is how this picture came about. It's called Girl with Flags. Lord, Heavenly Jesus from God is a house that was in the 3rd Ward here in Houston. And every so often, the resident of this home would paint a different slogan on the front of his house. This is one of my favorite ones that I was able to capture. And from time to time, you would go by, the furniture would be rearranged on the porch, so forth and on. And it is typical of what you find within the inner city. The kiss. I was passing one day and with my camera, and I spoke to this man and this woman, and he looked at me and we looked at each other, and he said, "Hey, take our picture." And this is an intimate moment of 2 elderly people sharing a kiss. And that is, the photograph is named The Kiss. It appeared in the New York Times during Juneteenth of this year. Mama front porch. What it is typical summer scenes in Houston. And you can tell that the mother lives there because she has no shoes on her feet. and I consider it as being 3 generations. There is a daughter there with house shoes on, sitting on the left. But typically, the houses, the shotgun houses were small, and entertainment for people came over to the front porch. So they are all on the front porch enjoying a time with mother and probably grandmother with her 2 daughters and the kids. So this is a typical scene that you will find during the summertime in Houston. Lady in black hat with feathers. I worked for a small newspaper and I went to cover a funeral. It was a city council person who had passed that was an African-American. And afterward, the coffin had came out and was into the hearse. This lady was standing there and she was somewhat like in a trance. I think she was aware that I was making the picture, but she didn't move. In other words, in her own way, she posed. And the hat, the black hat, it reminded me of the time that my grandmother would say during before Easter that they had she had placed a hat on layaway. This was typical things in the South. The people used layaway because of not having enough funding to go in and just buy it, but to get it out in time for Easter. And on Easter Sunday, the church would be full of women wearing their church hats. So it reminded me of that, even though this was a sad occasion being at a funeral, but I think it's very appropriate for her with the black hat and black feathers. It's amazing. It's a wonderful photo. The movie Roots had come out. And one day I was traveling down a street and I looked up and I saw these 3 kids standing, looking off into the distance. And I had to make a decision. I stopped my car in a moving lane of traffic and got out and laid down because I had a 35 millimeter a camera and I shot up. I wanted to pick up the roots as well as the kids and the trees. And so I was able to accomplish that only because I was brave enough to stop my car in a moving lane of traffic and to get out and to make this particular photograph. The kids never spoke to me and I never spoke to them. But I think there is a way in which we communicate with each other, that they are aware that something is about to happen, as well as I am aware that this is a moment that I cannot pass up. And I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to make this image at this time.
Thank you, Early, for sharing those wonderful images with us. Right now, I'm going to bring you and John together for a conversation to discuss your similar artistry and touch on a few things from what may have inspired you from your past and over your career. So I'll start with a quote from Gordon Parks. He wrote the foreword to the Black Photographers Annual in 1973. In part, it reads, "Who better to record us but you, with your eye and your heart knowing, your hands and feet feeling." So do you have a sense that when you're photographing, that you, based on your life experience, can best capture what's going on around you in your community and from your travels abroad?
Yes, I think that I can. But again, art is life. And based upon my experiences of growing up, having the experiences of interacting with elders, children, and peoples in the community in general, and being very observant. And I think most photographers is extremely observant. We look to see, and we more or less know when a moment needs to be captured, it's a moment that we cannot pass up. And so our sensitivity and our way and our upbringing and the experiences we have motivate us to react to a subject in a certain kind of way.
Yeah, I have to agree with Early on that. I feel the same way. I feel like our whole experience is what determines what we see. It's how we frame and shape the world. It's what makes us recognize that moment that's important to press the shutter on. And it also even has a second life, what you say, Early, when we choose to print a picture, when we choose to share it, when that becomes important, you know, when that happens.
That is so true, because, you know, you have the opportunity to crop the picture, to make it a little more contrasty, or either to flatten it out a little bit, or to make it soft, to try to imitate the sweet fly paper of life by the master Rodi Carava.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
That is something I heard you speak of that before, and that is something that I think all of us try to, to capture. I mean, that same kind of feel. But the most unique thing about an image in the darkroom, when you make that picture today, and you come back a month or a year and make that picture, that image has to stand on its own, according to the contrast, according to the tones of it and everything. And so this is what is so important.
Now, Early, you know, when I first started taking pictures and I was working with Bobby Singstack in the dark room, Bobby would say to me, Johnny, a photograph has to have a ghost in it. It has to have a soul. It has to be able to hang on a wall. And if it was the only picture in the room, it could hold up a wall. So when you print a picture, does it have that spirit in it? Does it have that soul in it that, you know, reaches out from the picture and grabs you?
Sure.
And I tell you what picture does it for me, man. Well, all your pictures do, but the picture, I had to bring my wife in here to look at it. Girl with a flag, man, that picture is the bomb. I want that picture.
Okay. Well, we'll do a trade.
There you go. Okay.
We'll do a trade. 2 shoes for girl in the flag.
I got it ready for you. It's in the room.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I like that negotiation, right? Live and in person.
Live and in person. Made to
Yes.
Live in person. But that's the unique thing about it. An image has to stand on its own, and it's up to the viewer to come to his or her own conclusion based upon his experiences. This is how the audience relate to what you're doing or what you're doing. Their experiences more or less talk to them in similar ways. And to us as photographers, I think that when the image appear in the developer and you begin to see it, you know whether or not that you have achieved what you set out to do. Well, it's complete, because making the picture, developing the film, bringing the image into life, and it becomes, you know, a part of life. Even though it's a picture on a page, but it's alive, and it speaks not only to us as photographers, but to our audience.
I tell you, Early, a friend of mine, he's a really good photographer named Frank Stewart. I don't know if you know him or not.
Yeah, I know Frank.
Okay. Well, Frank and I were talking to James Van Der Zee many years ago. And James Van Der Zee is, you know, a Renaissance photographer. He's Marcus Garvey's photographer, for those who don't know him. And I said to Mr. Van Der Zee, I said, so what's the most difficult thing about photography when you were growing up? He said, the most difficult thing about photography when I was growing up is still the most difficult thing for photography for me. I said, what's that? He said, making the camera see what you see. And
That's true.
And I guess that's the case, you know. That's the challenge. Do we take a picture that truly expresses what we see, you know?
That is so true.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then the measuring stick of what is right and what is wrong as far as exposure, developing time, making the print, there is a very, very short window. And so based upon our experiences and the experiences of us as photographers, the ones who work in the darkroom, you know, you have complete control over that. But yet and still, actually going back to what you said about Mr. Van Der Zee, is the found image represent what you saw, because sometimes you can see it, you can photograph it, and then look at it, and it's not what you saw.
Right, exactly.
Which leads me to another question about the
Uh-huh.
tools that you use to capture. We understand that the camera is the vessel that interprets or helps you to interpret what you're seeing and bring it to light. So what are the tools that you use? What is the camera that you use to capture your images?
Well,
What's your go-to?
well, for me, I shoot with the Hasselblad, which is the 2 1/4, and the Nikon primarily. I have a Leica camera, but I still gravitate back to the Nikon because I'm more comfortable with it. Now, to be honest, the camera is only a tool, and it really does not matter which camera you have. And for most photographers out there, if you can shoot at about f8 or about f11 during the daytime for your depth of field and your focus, are you going to get a good photograph, a great photograph? It depends on the subject. But for me, I started out with a Shikamat 124G. Then I moved up to the old Rolleiflex. Then I moved up to the Hasselblad. I started out with a Nikon, just a little Nikon, a Nikromat, then to the Nikon F series, and that's where I'm at now. And I have a Leica, but I use it sparingly, but primarily Nikon 35 and 2 1/4 Hasselblad.
I started off shooting Nikon, and then I eventually got a Leica and fell in love with the rangefinder. And now I use my digital camera more than anything now. I have a Sony AR7 III, and I use my Leica lenses on it.
Mhm.
And my really go-to camera, because it fits in my pocket, is a little Panasonic XL100. And it's the camera that I used to take that picture of that man carrying the statue.
Okay.
But I like that little camera, you know.
Well-
But the thing about it too is that growing up taking pictures, you have 36 exposures in your camera. So whenever you'd make a decision to take a picture, you know, it would be a decision. And you'd spend those 36 exposures wisely, you know.
Of course.
And that's how I grew up. So even with a digital camera, which has the capacity to take a whole bunch of pictures, I'm still out there shooting like I got 36 exposures. You know, I'm still, you know, very sparingly taking pictures. There's a picture that I have that a lot of people like. I don't think we showed it today, but it's called Unite or Perish. And these young girls are walking down the middle of the street at the Bud Billiken Parade. And I was scanning that negative the other day, and it's a good picture, you know, and I realized that that's the only picture I had of those kids with that sign, you know, and that was taken in the 60s. And it's like, wow, you really, you know what I mean? Early used to really take care of them 36
Well, you know, the 36 is what you had. So you made one picture, no more than 2 pictures. And that was basically it. But 36 exposure roll of film was a lot of film. And you're supposed to have a lot of photographs when you return.
Right.
Today, you see people, when they shoot digital, they just take the camera and zimp, 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 zimp. And are they seeing? What are they doing? You know, because in other words, you're just, I don't know what you call it, but it can't be. Yep.
I know I saw some photographs this young guy shot in the Philippines. There were a couple of really beautiful photographs. I said, well, how many pictures did you take there? He said, I was there 3 days. I took about 1,200. I was like, 1,200.
Well, you know, it's almost like shooting sports. You know, when you shoot sports, basketball or football or whatever, quite naturally, you're going to shoot a lot of frames.
Right.
But you talk to photographers now and say, I went on vacation and I shot 800 pictures, and then they have an exhibit and they only have 10 or 12 pictures there. This is what they had out of the 800 that they made. So accidentally, and to all of you out there with cell phones and cameras and so forth and on, amateurs make the best photographs by chance. Unbeknown, amateurs are the best photographers. They capture the most exciting and the most unusual thing due to the fact that they are not as precise. They are not more or less saying, I have to get this right. They just throw up the camera and click, and it happens. And digital opened up a whole new, different world to photography. But a lot of people and photographers abuse it because you have to ask yourself what you're looking at. Is it for real? If you want to see a real picture, go to an amateur who is not versed in Photoshop and all of that, and look at his images. And I guarantee you, somewhere you'll find something exciting about it.
Yeah,
But
you're
that
right.
forces you to have a refined and discerning eye. It's good practice too.
Of course,
Yeah.
definitely so.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
most
The
important.
other thing about, since we're speaking of digital photography, and you're right, it totally has broadened the spectrum of things that we get to see, you know? And the thing about it, that's, I enjoy Instagram, you know, and I love to see photographers work on Instagram. And what I really want to stress to a lot of the young people that I talk to is you got to print your stuff. You know, you got to get it off the internet. You got to put it on some paper and let it live on a wall or someplace. My wife showed me a picture the other day, and it was a little raggedy Polaroid picture. And it was a picture of her cousin holding her a few days after she got out the hospital. That picture is so important. You know,
Yeah.
it's so important to have. And if it were on the internet, it would just get lost in oblivion, like so many things, you know?
Yeah. But you know, there are also special moments that in a conversation with you, when you talked about the little, was she 12-year-old girl who photographed the 8 minutes or something of George Floyd?
Hey, man, that's right.
Now see, but without digital and without the new technology, that never would have happened.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you something, man. That little girl with that iPhone changed the world. I
Of
mean,
course.
that image that she took of George Floyd became the voice of anybody who's ever been oppressed, and unfortunately, anybody who's ever oppressed anybody. But the other thing that blew my mind, just to go off track for a second, was these two guys died in a police station in India, and the crowd outside the police station were yelling, "We will not be George Floyd." And they were chanting that over and over again.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing I could think about was that little girl with her iPhone saying to the policeman, "Get off of him, get off of him." And that image became the most powerful image in the world because of the technology and also because of the pandemic. And we were all trapped at home and forced to watch it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Very true.
So guys, we are really enjoying this conversation between the two of you. The folks that have joined us today are eager to get the questions that they submitted answered by you guys. So I'm going to hand it over to Zakia, who will manage the question and A portion of our conversation today.
Get us in trouble.
Wow, what an amazing talk. And it was so beautiful to just hear the both of you just go back and forth so effortlessly with each other. And so I'm really excited to get into the questions. For anyone who wants to drop a question, there is the Q&A option icon right at the bottom of the screen. So one of the questions that we have up here by Michael Williams is for John Simmons. What was it like to photograph subjects in the southern states when sundown towns were in effect?
Actually, I thought I just answered that question a few minutes ago.
Yes, he answered that one while we were waiting on early. So I think the third one, it would be the first one for you, Zakia.
Okay, I apologize. There's a
Zakia,
lot
let me
here.
say something real quick. That photograph you're looking at right now, I didn't do anything early to that picture. That's how it was,
Uh-huh.
you know? And it was on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles. And I thought about how that light is coming through the branches of a tree. And it can only come through the branches of a tree at that time of day, on that precise day. The next day, because of the way the earth moves, it would not be on those wings like that.
Yep,
It's
that
like,
is so true.
it's so incredible that how we get to be in these places at the precise moment to take this picture. And I shot about 3 frames of these 2 people. And then I walked up to that guy and I said, hey man, I just took a real nice picture of you and your friend here. Would you like to see it? He said, no, 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 I don't want to see it. And then I left. But yeah, I just want to say that. Sorry to interrupt our questions, but I just want to share that moment of how special it is to be at the right place at the right time.
No, that's great. So the next question we have is from Kevin, and Kevin is asking, what is your process when it comes to using your inner voice in your art? I guess either one of you can feel free to jump into that question.
Early, you want to go?
Well, I guess one's inner voice carries one back to what he's been exposed to over the years, because that inner voice that speaks to you tell you to make the image. It reconnects you to your past in some sort of way. And I've said it time and time again, one experiences and the things that we're inquisitive about that appears to us, how nature and man coexist and how we move and how we interact. All of that plays a part as to when and how we photograph. The lighting, the setting, the surrounding, all of that plays a very, very important part. And that inner voice, yes, it do talk to you and it tells you to go to work, make the image.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like, if I could just listen to my inner voice all the time, I'd be so much better off. I think that intuition is the best thing in the world to guide us, and intuitively, those moments like you talk about, sports guys being in the groove when they're just sailing to the basket, or you look at Muhammad Ali in the ring, how he's not even fighting, he's just like, moving, just intuitively moving,
Well,
a lot of the pictures that I take have been taken that way. And I'm sure it's the same way with Early, just to be able to, I'm sorry.
it's a magical moment.
Yeah.
I would like to say, it's magic.
Yeah.
When your subject is there and you are there, you see it and you are able to use your tools. And the audience, the most important thing, the camera is only a tool. If we as photographers do not manipulate or change the setting or whatever, the camera, it's there. It's up to us to make the image, to capture the emotion of what is happening and what is going on. And this is the things that make up a good photograph. And, to me, it is. Mhm. And so this is what I strive for.
The other thing, Early, what you said is, I have to agree with again, but I feel like there's a certain amount of destiny that me and my subjects share with each other. I was driving around Little Tokyo in Los Angeles around the block 2 or 3 times looking for a parking space. And all of a sudden I got a parking space and it was at night. And as soon as I parked, there's a homeless person on the ground and a shopping cart is laid down next to them. And the building has a sign that says Federal Public Defender. And
Yeah.
it was such a contradiction to what was going on in the image. But the thing that was amazing was as soon as I stepped out the car, that image fit perfectly into a 50 millimeter frame. And
Yeah.
we were destined to tell that story together. Me and that person were destined to have that moment so we could share it with the world.
And sometimes the subject matter and the printed words makes the powerful statement.
Oh, yeah.
And it's up to the photographer to observe and to see that and be mindful of it and capture it, at a certain particular time.
Exactly.
Just like the photograph you're looking at called Mr. Shine here,
Beautiful.
It was out on a canopy. I had just returned from a newspaper assignment and he was standing there. And in our community, we have a way of speaking by nodding our heads. And I nodded and he nodded and I raised my camera and he smiled. And this is what happened. And the name of this photograph is called Mr. Shine.
It's
It,
a really nice
yeah.
picture, man.
Right. Mhm. Elton John used that picture in his dressing room when he came to Rice University several years ago.
It's
That
cool.
was the one he selected from the gallery. Mhm.
Beautiful.
Thanks for answering that question. Those were some really insightful and I'm sure inspirational answers for folks. So the next question we have is from Jeffrey, and Jeffrey asks, this is specifically towards John. John is asking if you knew, or Jeffrey is asking if you knew Ted Gray, who was a photographer at Muhammad Speaks, and do you know where he is today if you know him?
I don't know where he is today. I don't know where he is today, but I knew him when I was taking pictures, you know, as a young man in Chicago. He was one of the big boys, you know, like Bobby. He was older than me and somebody that I admired and looked up to. Yeah, I remember him. He's got some incredible photographs, really incredible photographs. This picture that you guys are looking right now is called JFK and Doll. And Will laying on Chevy, that's his sister in that picture. And that's his mother's hand with that cigarette in it.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you remember
I
early?
love the layers of that image.
Yeah,
Hey,
cigarette.
early, do you remember when people used to have John Kennedy in their house, the Virgin Mary, Jesus Christ, and Martin Luther King on their wall?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody did.
I think I had submitted a photograph called, I forgot what I named it. It was a picture of John F. Kennedy. It was a poster picture, a little card, standing next to a light socket on a wall
Oh man.
outside of a building. And it was John F. Kennedy. Ask not what you can do for your country, for yourself, but what you can do for your country, whichever way it goes. And I thought it was just so unique. It made a powerful statement at that particular time and the way in which the light came through the photograph. The one you're looking at now is called Flipping Boy, which was made west of downtown in a community that was settled by freed slaves. And the community is still there, but it has been heavily gentrified. But this little boy was turning flips. A newspaper, a TV station was out one day making some images of me for an interview. And this little boy said, I can turn a flip. And he began to turn flips. And I kneeled down and made this picture of him. And it just showed the juxtaposition as to how the city buildings rises above the community there.
Thank you,
Really
Early.
nice picture.
So we have another question for John in regards to cinematography. Nate would like to know, in reference to Bradford Young discussing how different lenses interpret characters in reality, what is your philosophy of lens language and how do you incorporate it in your photography as well as your cinematography work?
Well, it's a lot different in still photography for me. I like a 50 millimeter lens in still photography. And Early said something the other day, which has been said by a number of photographers. If you're not close enough, what did you say, Early? How'd you say it about
If you
not
can't
being,
reach out and touch your subject, you're not close enough.
right, exactly. So a lot of the people that I've admired throughout my career in still photography, their favorite lens was a 50 millimeter lens. So I really like that lens. In certain cities where there's more congestion, like New York and Chicago, and you're right up on the street, a 35 millimeter lens works the best. The picture of this guy that you're looking at right now, these two guys, that's a 50 millimeter lens. So basically, I'm in love with a 35 and a 50 in my street photography. When it comes to cinematography, the language of lenses become more important, or not more important, but more significant. And what I mean by that is different lenses are used to create different emotional responses. Like a long lens separates someone from their background. It compresses the background and throws it out of focus. A wide angle lens incorporates the person into the environment. So if you imagine a story of two people and they're a couple and they're very happy and they move into a new place and you shoot that scene with a wide angle lens. And as the relationship begins to fall apart, the lenses get tighter and the environment becomes less important and the emotions of the people become more important. That's just an example of lens selection. And when we speak of Bradford, Bradford is a very good friend of mine, and he's so articulate when it comes to speaking on his cinematography. I just love to hear him speak. But I hope that answered the question.
Oh, yes, that is important too. Also, people have to realize that with cinema photography, the scene is shot with one particular lens, and as that scene is, when you go back and you edit that and put it all together, as the scene changed, the lens may have changed, but each scene is shot separate, and so that allows what you were saying, John, to be able to express the emotions and to get the intimacy of your subjects that particular way. Mm-hmm.
The other thing about cinematography too is that whenever we're making a movie or shooting a TV show, we're bringing to life the words on a page. And by the time you get to the set, there's been an agreement made between you and the director, the producers, if it's a TV show, the network and the showrunners. So it's a very collaborative, creative process, which when I deliver an image for TV, I'm answering the wishes of a lot of different energies. When I pick up that still camera, I'm out on the street by myself, there's nobody there telling me what to do, you know? And I'm not trying to satisfy anybody's needs or, you know, tell their story. I'm just telling my story, and that's a real big difference.
Oh, yeah.
The pressure is off, you know?
Thanks you all for answering that. We also have another question in the chat from Kalechi Aguancha asking if you all feel that the black and white image further compels your images.
For me personally, I feel like black and white is my medium when it comes to still photography. I feel like it best expresses the narrative of what I'm trying to say. Not only that, but you're not looking at colors, you're looking at just the story. I mean, there are pictures that should be taken in color. I don't take many of those, and I don't print hardly any. I just feel like it just zeroes in on my narrative more. And I'm also influenced by all the black and white photographs that have touched me so deeply, I guess.
I agree with John totally on that. It's up to the photographer mainly to express himself. And with the wide range of that you have in printing in black and white, how it eliminates all of the distraction, and it's only the image and the subject that is there, your subject matter that is right before you. Here it is in a monochromatic. And to me, it is so powerful because black and white allows the image itself to speak to the audience.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good picture right there, Early.
Yeah, this one is called Men with Dogs. And the guys are sitting around. This is on Lowndes Avenue in Houston, Texas. And they're not homeless, but they gather in front of this place or various places along Lowndes and sit during the daytime and play dominoes, cards, or drink, or whatever, or however. And you can see that the dogs, I don't know if it's this man dogs, but the dogs are very comfortable, you know, sitting out there with them. And I thought that it reminded me a lot of Walker Evans with the signage in the windows there of the old building. And I thought that the way in which they addressed the color of the dog and the weather beat wood and so forth, it played, a magnificent. It all came together so wonderful.
There's a lot of tones in that image. You know,
Oh,
you
yeah.
said something really important. I mean, the tones of gray and their juxtaposition to each other are infinite. You can never run out of what those tones of gray can do, you know?
Yep. Here is your boy, Rock D. Carava.
Yeah, I was being a copycat that day, that's for sure. I was definitely standing on his shoulders. That's
Well,
in
it
Chicago.
happened sometime.
Yeah, I'm glad, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, those cats, I mean, they were the compass that pointed us in the right direction. Look at that right there, man.
Yeah. Now, if you look at hip hop here and you look at the tone, I printed this picture several times. And I think that each time I printed a little bit different. I try to match the same size if I'm printing the same size photograph. I try to match the same tones, but sometimes your chemistry, the temperature of your chemistry, the paper, the lot that you have, plays an important part as to the tones you may be able to achieve. But then again, according to how one's feel that particular day or whatever. And Johnny, it goes back to what you were saying about looking at the sunlight on a particular day. There's one photographer, I can't think of her name. She said that she photographed out of a window or the shadow at one time, and she wrote the date and the time down. And she came back the next year and she made the picture again. But each and every day, a scene that we see appears differently. I think that each and every day that we print a picture in the darkroom, yes, you can match it very, very closely. But if you look at it extremely close and examine it, you will see a slight difference in the tone or whatever that you may see within that image. And so a photograph really has to talk to you. Different days, it speaks a different language.
No truer words been said. Hey, what about that picture behind you, Early? That
Which one? The lady?
Yeah.
I shot that picture in Fifth Ward in a house that was in disrepair back in the 70s. And I had an opportunity to make some large photographs. And so that picture, it hasn't been exhibited in years, but this is a large one that I had in the studio, and I bought it here and hung it, and hung it there for as a backdrop. Mhm.
Nice.
Thank you.
Wow, we could listen to you all talk all day. Like a lot of us, I'm sure, have learned so much.
Go and get the sandwiches and come back.
Yes, or a drink or a coffee, whatever your preference is.
Yeah.
But I am going to pass it on to Dr. Johnson, who is the committee chair for the Daryl Chappelle Foundation.
Good afternoon, everyone. And what a wonderful program. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and also to John and Early for their wonderful dialogue. It was really a treat. And I also want to thank Daryl Chappelle and also all of the donors that make all that we do in the programming committee possible. And also, there is a quick poll that should have just appeared on your screen. If you could please answer just those 3 short questions, we'd really appreciate it. And this is also an opportunity for us to invite you to support more programming such as this in the future. I'm inviting all of you to do a couple of things. One, go to the DarylChappelleFoundation.org website, and that is, and for all of you who are joining us via the phone, I'm going to spell it for you. That's DARRYL Chappelle, CHAPPELL Foundation.org. And on the foundation, you'll be able to scroll down to the bottom and join the YouTube channel for the DCF. And then along the way, you're going to pass opportunities to donate and to contribute. And we would really love for you to support our efforts in supporting our artists out there and also showcasing their work like we've done today. So again, visit the DarylChappelleFoundation.org and join us for future programs. Thank you.
And of course, we want to take this moment to also share that you can donate and support and follow the Southside Community Arts Center. Every individual wants to leave a legacy to be remembered, something positive they've done for their community. And those are the words of Dr. Margaret Taylor Burroughs, our founder and an amazing artist in her own right. Zakia has just shared the link, so we appreciate your support as well. Thank you.
This has really been wonderful. I'm so glad you guys did this. This was incredible.
We need to go get those sandwiches because we want to keep listening to you all.
Yes, and I'm
Do
glad
that.
we didn't get to all the questions. There were some really just amazing and well thought out questions that we had.
Well, I'll be willing to do it again at a later date if John is willing to do it.
I'm willing to do it for sure. We got to stay in touch, Early.
Okay. And if
Thank you
April-
all so much. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you to the participants. Thank you to the interpreter, Jimena Sanchez, who's behind the scenes. We will make this available on our respective websites, and you will get a notice if you sign up about the actual recording being available. So thank you so much. Have a great day and enjoy and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank
John,
you.
let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Sure, bro.
Thank you
Yeah,
all.
thank you.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
program. Thank you.
All right, John.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Daryl. Thanks a lot, you guys. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Be in touch,
It's
man.
fun.
Bye-bye.
It was fun.
A lot of fun.
Okay.
Now let's go enjoy the sun. Haven't seen it in 5 days.
Go in there, take your jacket.
I guess we'll have to enjoy the sun from, our windows because it's still looking pretty rough out there.
Yeah.
We still have quite a bit of snow and it's still very cold.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Well, but spring is on the way, so hope is coming.
hope
Yes.
is coming. All right, take care.
Oh, bye.
All right.